Well, I think the biggest thing that people have to realize is that it's not a business of the business. Your business is not about your business at all. Your business is about, yes, you need, I will assume that if you're a manufacturer, you're the best darn manufacturer that's out there that that company should hire in order to bring their product to the market. What you have to be is you have to be a great relationship builder. Without the relationship, you won't have a business at all. So first thing I would say is you've got to look at the important nature of a positive culture within your company. So if whether you're a solopreneur or you're a leader of an organization that has 1,000 employees in it, as a leader, you better believe that you have got to have the trust of your team, or they're going to do things out of like just because it's on their job requirement sheet rather than, don't you want your team going to bat for you?
What's up, everybody? This is Paul Critchley, president of New England Lean Consulting and host of the New England Lean podcast. I'm really excited about our guest this week. It's Doug Sandler. Now, Doug is an entrepreneur and a podcast industry leader. Where I got to know him, though, was several years ago from his book, Nice Guys Finish First. And that was actually a #1 ranked Amazon bestseller. He's since pivoted, and as podcast host of the Nice Guys on Business, Doug has interviewed such people as Gary Vaynerchuk, Ariana Huffington, John C. Maxwell, and a bunch of other people, a bunch of celebrities. Now, Doug is a nationally recognized speaker, writer, and he's the founder of Turnkey Podcast Productions. So they provide podcast production, editing, launch services. Now, full disclosure, we here at New England Lean Podcast don't use him for that. I really get to know him when I read his book, Nice Guys Finish First. I really, really liked it. And that's why I was so excited to have him on the podcast with us. So in this episode, we talk a lot about trust and engagement, empowerment, positive reinforcement. Back in the day, Doug actually owned his own DJ business. So he really comes at this from a really unique perspective. He's not an engineer. He's not even really a lean person, although if and when you read his book, you'll definitely see a lot of tenets of respect for people in the pages. Now, he doesn't use the same vernacular as lean practitioners as we do, but certainly you'll see it. You'll see it in there, and you'll hear it here in this episode. So I was so happy that when I reached out to Doug to invite him on, he'd say yes. So I hope you get a lot out of the episode. I know I did. I really enjoyed our discussion with Doug. There's a couple of giveaways, actually, if you are interested in podcasting. So Doug outlines those at the end of the episode, and I'll have those linked in the show notes as well as a link out to his book, which I do highly recommend. So I hope you enjoy it. As always, I appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. All right, so welcome to the New England Lean Podcast. My name is Paul Critchley. I'll be your host. And today, as I mentioned in the intro, we are honored to have Doug Sandler with us. Doug, how are you?
Paul, man, it's good to have you. Good to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me. And how did we get together originally? Do you remember?
I read your book actually a long time ago, which I love, by the way. Nice Guys Finish First, which is a great title, by the way. So kudos to you or to whoever came up with that one.
I think I wrote in the first chapter, maybe above the somewhere around chapter #1, Gary Shandling said, "If you don't think that nice guys finish first, you don't know where the finish line is." So I always felt like I just always wanted, in order to get what I want to get out of life, I felt like it's so much better and easier to get that if you're just a nice guy, and it doesn't mean through fake means. It's just how I am. It's because I just think it's the right way to be.
Yeah. And so we've talked before on this podcast. I've had a lot of industry professionals on, and I certainly have shared stories from my history of bad bosses that I've had. And that's why, when I saw your book, Barnes and Noble, I think it was, but when I saw it, I'm like, so that's the title is what made me pick it up. And then I read the back cover. I'm like, this is something that I got to read. I put it right up there with the no a-hole rule. which
Yep.
I'll have to say it that way, so I don't want to throw the E
All
explicit
good.
tag
All
on
good.
it, right? But it's kind of the same kind of a thing. So that's really what drew me to the work that you do. And then obviously since then, you have your very successful podcast. So congrats on the success you've had there as well.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that.
But so sort of the reason I wanted to, and thanks again for agreeing to be on, because one of the reasons I wanted to invite you on was to talk a little bit about that. So in our listenership, we have a lot of lean practitioners. So people that are, in it to practice on how to help their businesses become better, how do we get stuff through faster, and all that kind of good stuff, cheaper and well, I should say less expensive. But at the core of our, like, own a consulting business. At the core of that is really about employee engagement, and that certainly ties into not being a jerk because you lose the message along the way. So that's kind of really, I wanted to have you on so you can kind of share your perspective, because you're not an engineer, right?
No, definitely not an engineer. Never, spreadsheets give me hives. So no, I'm
Yeah.
absolutely not an engineer.
So I love where you come from, and how you've approached this. So if you could share with the audience a little bit of your background, because it's way unique for this show.
Yeah, well, I started in business by accident. I in college, I always wanted to listen to music, be around music, and I had a friend of mine who was a DJ at a local bar, and she asked me one night if I'd fill in for her just doing some DJ work. And that was in 1984, 1985, somewhere around there. And so records and all that stuff. And I loved the idea, not because I wanted to be at the party or at that time it was at the bar, but I wanted to control the environment. So I got to control the dance floor by being a DJ. And I'm like, this is really a fun thing. And I was always like this guy, what's the expression? I didn't have, 15 years of sales experience. I had 1 year of experience 15 times. I hopped from job to job, but the consistent thing in my life was always my DJ business. And so in the mid 90s, there was an opportunity for me to make it a full-time gig. So I discovered that the people that were successful as DJs weren't necessarily the ones that played the best music and the ones that had the best equipment. It was the ones that serviced their clients the best. It was the ones that, spent time with them on the phone and built the relationship with them and really understood what it was going to take to throw a killer party once it got to party day, those 4 hours. So we get to spend, 3 months, 6 months, a year, sometimes planning somebody's party. And I'd much rather put my effort and energy into the planning side of things rather than into the deliverable side of things. I will assume that if somebody's going to be a DJ, they know what they're doing. It's the relationship that you build over the time, which is the essential component of success at least in that environment. And I was thinking as I was building this business, and from the early 90s to the mid 90s, I was part-time. And then I started doing like 50 and 60 gigs a year. And so I was making maybe $50,000-$60,000 a year DJing 1 day a week, and the same amount of money in a regular career working 40 hours a week. And I'm like, no, it doesn't make sense to put my money into this full-time stuff. So I made the jump to full-time. And then I started doing 75 to 100 gigs a year. And then instead of charging $1,000 a piece, I was charging 1,500 and then 2,000, 2,500. And at some point in building this business, I was making $300,000-$400,000 a year as a DJ working 1 day a week.
That's awesome.
And so for me, it was like, let me take that same philosophy and let me start teaching other people how to use customer service as a way to build your business, how to develop leads, how to generate revenue. And that was really the beginning of this amazing ride of building a business. And fortunately, I've always been somebody that's diversified income, things that I do. And so I had always had my hand in the idea of going online with business. So a handful of years ago, wrote that book, Nice Guys Finish First, started getting into the online space while still maintaining my entertainment business. And man, oh man, when COVID hit in March, a year ago almost, I was very fortunate that I had that income from my online business, which was the same as then my DJ business also. And I went from doing 60 to 75 jobs a year in the later part of my entertainment business to 0 overnight in March. And all of my friends that are in the entertainment business who did not diversify, didn't get into the online space, didn't get into any other space, they were caught flat-footed. I feel really bad for them, but this is kind of why I do the diversification thing. You never know who thought a pandemic was going to hit the world. So that's just, in a nutshell, that's why I do what I do. And that's the philosophy that I've always had, is just build your business based upon great customer service and great relationships. You can translate that into any business that you do,
Mhm.
lean company, fat company, whatever company it's out there. Hey, good customer service is going to win the day every time.
Right. And that's where, so in our, like my world and, of lean consulting and helping businesses understand what that means and how to do that, we call that the voice of the customer. Right. So there's a lot of customer feedback surveys that we send out. Part of our business is helping with quality management systems, which is, for you, it's like super, boring
Right,
probably,
right.
but
No, not boring.
it's all the same stuff, which is you ask your customers, a specific number of questions in, how are we doing? What, we do, sometimes we'll do keep, stop, start, what should we keep doing, stop doing, start doing, right? And all that's valuable information. A quote I use a lot is from Henry Ford, and he said, somebody asked him, he didn't invent the automobile, but he certainly made it available, right, to the masses. Somebody asked him, well, how did you even know to, how did you basically, decide you're going to sell cars? And, did you just ask your customers and they explained to you what they wanted? And he says, no, if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Right. So in other words, they can't necessarily see, they don't understand what the next thing is. Right. So you have to take what the customers say. I won't say with a grain of salt, but but you have to, right, to your point, you have to look over the bow and say, all right, what's coming? Maybe a pandemic comes down, but the last time we had one was 100 years ago. So you can't really plan for that. Right.
No, you definitely can't plan for a pandemic. You have to do what you need to do in order to be true to yourself. And for me, it was all about the diversification. It was all about, Henry Ford also said something else. He said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. It's
Mhm.
like, hey, look, the people that are caught flat-footed in the pandemic scenario right now, um, you could stay flat-footed and you could wait for this. I'm just going to ride this storm out. And I would tell you that that's probably not a wise thing to do. This new normal, it's like live events. I don't know that live events are ever going to come back the way that they did. People realize now the reality of the virtual event. You can save time, energy. I talk about, what do you keep, what do you get rid of, and what do
Mhm.
you adjust. It's like, oh, I don't think virtual events should ever go away. I mean, it's such an efficient way to run your business. And if you can coach or you can consult through virtually, as we all can do now on Zoom, and other platforms, why would we ever go back to that? I just think that that is
Mhm.
ludicrous. Does not make sense to me.
And you're right. All the setup that you're looking at right here is all COVID related because part of it was I started this podcast, due to COVID, during COVID.
Yep.
But the other side of the house was in the business, we're doing just that. We couldn't, the story I tell is in March, within 72 hours, everything we had on the books for 2020 got blown away.
Yep. Yep.
Some was postponed, which was fine. So we've, since picked that back up, but some of it just is gone. But to supplant that, we've gone virtual. So now we have clients, we're regional to New England, but now we have clients practically across the country.
Yeah.
And it's all because of this, so instead of me having to, drive to the airport 2 hours early and get on a plane and all this other stuff, I can hop on Zoom or, like you said, anything. And 2 minutes later, we're sitting here talking. And I've gone on plant tours on somebody's phone just through
Yep.
the camera. And maybe it's not as good as physically being there, but when you factor in everything else, I think it's
And
a great solution.
it certainly is a great starting point. Oftentimes, you used to spend, as I spent, a lot of my time just in transportation, getting from and to. And as a guy that made my transition to the professional speaking world about 6 years ago, again, part of income diversification from the live events business, I went into the professional speaking world, teaching the philosophies that I built in my entertainment business and bringing them out to small businesses all over the country. I could certainly make a $5,000 to $10,000 paycheck going and talking on a stage. It would take me a day to get there, a day to get back. I'm there for a day, and it's like for 3 days I'm able to make that great $5,000 to $10,000, which was terrific. But if I could do the same thing virtually and in an environment where now I have the opportunity to not waste the bookend days and be put on a plane and get layovers, and I can do my job now from anywhere in the country. And I love that. I love that. So for me, this whole, I don't want to call this a blessing, but it's like, hey, look, we all got a wake up call in March. And so if you're using the wake up call as an opportunity to hit the snooze button, don't do that. Use it as an opportunity to, okay, how can I improve what I have going on in my world? As I mean, you pivoted, you made the adjustment. Maybe it's out of desperation. Some people make it out of desperation. Some people make it out of necessity, and some people make it because it's like they're okay with change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a guy that's always been okay with change, and I love the idea. While I hate the pain that the world is going through, I don't I don't see myself in the world's position. I see myself as, why is this happening not to me, but why is this happening for me? What am I getting out of this that could potentially be positive for me?
Right. Absolutely. And your point is valid, because again, this is nothing any of us asked for. And certainly I don't think anybody would say they're maybe better off now than they were. But to your point too, I can remember, having been an industry guy, anytime I wanted to work from home for whatever reason, I always kind of, I got the side eye, like, okay, maybe just this once. And now it's just like, you know what? And we're learning. I mean, there's been plenty of studies since March that have said, you know what? We're, some studies say we're just as productive. Some say we're better. So for some people, it's just a better option. I've always worked basically out of a home office. My wife, on the other hand, hasn't, but she's been home for almost a year. It took some adjustment, but now it's like she can see the benefits of it. Again, you don't have to drive the 40 minutes to work and 40 minutes back and all this other stuff. She's much more efficient. So yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
the skies here in Los Angeles are clear as opposed to smoggy. There's no traffic right now. It's the greatest thing. If I actually have to get in my car, which I probably drove a total of maybe 1,000 miles last year, if I have to get in my car to drive anywhere, I actually can get there. A 3 mile drive does not take me 45 minutes like it would have, 2 years ago. And again, I'm not wishing ill upon anybody in the world. But man, if this isn't a wake up call to the reality of, why are we building these? I'm staring literally at the Mattel building, which is a many stories, probably a 20-story building in El Segundo, California. I can see it in the far distance. And I don't know that anybody's actually working in that building. And I keep thinking, if we are able to do it without that building, why aren't we? Why haven't we been doing it that way? So talk about running a lean business. If you haven't learned that through this environment, it's like, oh, geez, okay. When
Yeah.
will you learn it?
Right. And that's all about, and again, I'll link it back to in lean speak, we talk, we break work into two categories: value added and non-value added. And certainly there's a waste of transportation, which is what we've just been talking about for the last 5 minutes. And, or inventory, which would be that building or any of the other buildings. Like I can look out my window and take a look at. It's just doesn't, to your point, it just doesn't make any sense. If we can do the same thing, we're just as productive or almost as productive from home. All the other stuff, the lack of pollution and, saving time and all this other stuff, it probably offsets the downside of all of us not being co-located. But so, yeah. So I did want to talk, Doug, a little bit. So you've done a lot of different things and you've explained how you've pivoted, and certainly COVID and all of our clients and anybody who's listening in their businesses have had to pivot because of it. But I wanted to talk to you also about, you've got some pretty interesting thoughts about trust, engagement, and empowerment. So I really wanted to pick your brain there, because again, you come at it from a different angle than, probably most of our listeners do. So I just kind of wanted to touch base on that a little bit. And how do you, you built this DJ business and you're looking around, you're thinking, okay, this is great, but how long is it going to last?
Right.
But what part did all of that play in building that business, and then how you pivoted from there into what you're doing now with your podcast and public speaking? And are there, things that dovetail, trust, empowerment, engagement wise that you use with your team, or when you talk to a conference full of people, like what kind of things do you say that they can do to address those kinds of things?
Well, I think the biggest thing that people have to realize is that it's not a business of the business. Your business is not about your business at all. Your business is about, yes, I will assume that if you're a manufacturer, you're the best darn manufacturer that's out there that company should hire in order to bring their product to the market. what you have to be is you have to be a great relationship builder. Without the relationship, you won't have a business at all. So first thing I would say is you've got to look at the important nature of a positive culture within your company. So if whether you're a solopreneur or you're a leader of an organization that has 1,000 employees in it, as a leader, you better believe that you have got to have the trust of your team, or they're going to do things out of like just because it's on their job requirement sheet rather than, don't you want your team going to bat for you? I talk about in my book a lot, I talk about catching people in the act, catching them in the act of doing something right. So when I used to walk into this agency that represented me in a small company, they had like 25 employees, let's say. So I used to walk into this organization and I would be the guy that would probably walk into the organization and speak positively of everything that's going on in there that I saw that was positive. So I would find somebody and I would let's say David, I would talk to David and I said, "Hey David, I really appreciate that extra communication that you provided for my client. That was great because I think that really helped me put another 5 levels of service into this event that we have coming up. I really appreciate when you do stuff like that." Instead of going in there and saying to David, "Hey David, it took you an extra 3 hours or 24 hours or 48 hours to get back to me on that email. Can we work more closely at responding to that email?" If instead of catching him in the act of doing something wrong, catch him in the act of doing something right, David will constantly be looking for me for approval for the things that he has done right. As a matter of fact, it's not just that he's looking for the constant approval, but now he's actually going to make a concerted effort to doing the right things, knowing that I'm going to actually say, "Hey, great job. I appreciate that." So many leaders nowadays and in previous lives, so many leaders, they feel like by complimenting somebody in their organization for doing something right, they're going to in turn around and say, "Hey, remember when I did that stuff right? My review's coming up. Can I get a raise?" Or they just look at it and they just say it's a sign of weakness to be nice to people, or complimenting somebody, it's fake or it's not disingenuine. Or I'm like, that's BS. I mean, I feel like, just to the core, I just want to be nice to people because I want to be supportive of people. I was raised by a single mom. Maybe my mom did a lot of things through words of affirmation, and maybe it was really helped me to learn a lot of these core soft skills. But I think without the soft skills, without being somebody that is genuine and nice and thoughtful and empathetic and compassionate, I think we lose a little bit of who we are as human beings. That being said, it's all about empowering the people that you have within your organization to make decisions, to do the things that they do, knowing that full well they are going to make mistakes, especially in the beginning. You empower somebody in the beginning to make decisions, small, large, whatever it is. You just give them a responsibility that would normally be on your plate of decisions to make. You give them the ability to do that. You fortunately have put yourself in a position now to be able to have a little less responsibility yourself. Not saying that you don't have the ability to oversee them, but let them do it. I mean, they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing it anyway. They're going to be doing the action items to get you there, positively anyway. So you may as well empower somebody to make a decision within your organization, because they're going to feel better about themselves. They're going to feel they're going to have more ownership in the decisions that they make. They feel like they have a little bit more ownership in the company that you are running or that you're managing. And I think it's a really great situation for everybody to be in. So I'm all about taking the people that are within my organization and empowering them to make. I don't want to make those decisions. It's not that I don't want to make them because I'm scared I'm going to make the wrong decision, but the more responsibility I can give to people within my organization and to delegate, that's why I hired them. Why would I hire them and then micromanage it? Oh, I'm sorry, the stuff that they are doing.
That's okay.
There's an edit point right there for you. Why would I
I know,
micromanage?
Doug, it's a family show. Come on.
Sorry, I don't want to
It's okay.
micromanage them. That's not my role. That's not where I want to be.
Right. And that's, there's a quote from Steve Jobs that we use a lot. And I'll paraphrase because I don't have it right in front of me, but it's like, he said, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We
Right.
hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. And everything you're describing, I know everybody listening who's into lean is like, that's what respect for people stands for. So in the House of Lean, we have two columns. One's continuous improvement. The other one's respect for people. And that's part, like before we hopped on, we were talking kind of like what I do, because we do different things, you and I. Continue, so it's really the tools side, and then the respect for people side, which is, for lack of a better term, the soft skill stuff. But that's exactly what you just described, which is, can I make every decision? Yes. Did I work hard? And, say I worked hard up from the shop floor and now I'm a manager, and, I used to run that machine, so I know what the answer probably is. Yeah, I probably could, but it's not helping anybody underneath me grow. We
Right.
had Patrick Adams on a couple of 3 weeks ago, and he's a lean guy, and he's got a new book coming out. And he almost used the same exact story that you just did, because he said he was walking around a plant with a plant manager, and somebody came up to them, said, "Hey, the line's down. I need your help." And they had the culture of always going to the leader to say, "What do you want me to do?" And then taking the orders and going back. And Patrick steps in and says, "Well, what do you think we should do? Because you run this machine every single day."
And
And so,
how great do you think that makes that guy feel? It's like, hey, I'm in a position to make a decision here and impress the boss rather than, you know, I just think that that's a better environment to be in. And it's one where you can actually stay in. We talk about this all the time on our podcast, The Nice Guys on Business, and we talk about staying in your zone of genius. My zone of genius is not that assembly line. My zone of genius is managing the team. And if I can manage the team without doing their job for them, I've put myself in a position to. Some leaders might think I'm just managing myself out of a job. Like, okay, well, if your organization really thinks so little of you that you're going to be managing yourself out of a job because you're delegating to everybody else, then they really don't know the kind of leader that you are, and maybe that's an organization you don't want to be a part of anyway.
right. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's old thinking. It's like the person at the top has all the knowledge, and then everybody underneath them, in various levels of ownership, say, they just pass orders up and down the food chain. And it's like, it's just wrong. And the funny thing is, we talk a lot of Gallup surveys in our work. So, and they haven't changed much over the years. 67% of people say they feel disengaged at work. And 3.5 prior to COVID, because that, turned all the
Right.
data kittywampus, but 3.5 million full-time Americans that work full-time quit their jobs every single month. And that's something I'll throw out in a training class. And, I won't tell people the number, and I'll say, what do you think it is? And, people guess 500,000 or maybe 1 million. And that's usually where it tops out. And then when I say it's 3.5 million, I get people look at me with wide eyes, because they start to realize all of the waste that comes along with that. And the biggest reasons why people quit have nothing to do with money. It's everything you just described. It's, why am I going to go to work? Because I just get told to do
Yeah.
what to do every single day. Nobody asked me for any ideas. I have no ownership. If it's not me, it's going to be some robot or a cobot or something down the line. So I just don't feel fulfilled. And when you couple that with the fact that Monday through Friday, we spend more waking hours at work than we do anywhere else doing
Yeah.
anything else, it's like, well, no kidding. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't people quit?
Yeah, it's that environment of going to work to do a job because the man tells you that's the job that you do, that you're a cog in a wheel. Again, that's probably why I've been self-employed for 30 years. I don't want to put myself in a position to ever be that cog where I don't unappreciated, undervalued, not getting paid what I want to get paid. I'm selling my time at wholesale so they can mark it up and sell it at retail to their customers. Like that to me, I just I don't respect that environment because it's not an environment that I feel productive. And aren't we on this earth to enjoy ourselves and to have a good time as we're going through it? And there's nobody that said that in order to get through life, I have to be miserable at a job. So I look at it and think I want to be happy with what I'm doing. So that's probably partly why I've embraced self-employment.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, me too, because I share a similar mindset, and I know it's not necessarily for everybody, but certainly I think the vast majority of people would feel better about their lives in general if they felt more engaged and empowered at work. One of the
Well,
things. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all risk and reward. As somebody that is self-employed, for me the reward outplays the risk. And for some people and I'm not belittling or diminishing someone that works at a company and has been there for 30 years. Maybe the risk is not as strong, or maybe the risk is stronger than the reward. So they're okay. They have the dependability of getting a check. They have benefit. I have friends of mine that say, self-employment, it's challenging. You know how much insurance is. I'm like, health insurance? Okay, so it's a blip on my radar screen, health insurance. But as a self-employed owner of an organization, I can make 5 to 10 times more than I could with my same skill set working for somebody. So for me, I'm like, I'll pay for my own freaking insurance. I don't care.
Yeah, right.
So that's the kind of stuff that I look to when it comes to, I advise a lot. I coach a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space. And for me, it's like, hey, if you can't handle the risk, then it's not a good environment, because you'll be worried about the risk all the time.
Yeah, and it is, speaking now, I'm 8 years in. It's a little bit of a roller coaster, right? And it's not for everybody. I'll tell you, and I'll compare myself to my wife. She's had the same job for 20 years, and to me, it's like nails on a chalkboard. There's no way I could do that. But for her, it is, and we have that discussion because we talk about risk and just like you said it. And for her, it's way too risky. When I
Yep.
talked about going out on my own, she was very, very nervous about it. But she, God bless her, she knows me. I mean, we've been together long enough. She could see the passion in me, and she's like, okay. And not for nothing, but I'm like, listen, if this doesn't work, I'll go. If I got to go bag groceries to make ends, I'll do it. Like, I don't care. I'll mow lawn, whatever I got to do. Thankfully, it didn't come to that. So
I agree.
it's
I
worked
agree.
out.
I feel this the same way. The same way. I will do whatever I have to do to stay self-employed. And fortunately, over a period of, since 1997, I think is when I went full time in the entertainment business. I've been fortunate. I haven't had to turn and work for anybody since 1997. I'll just want to keep it right here. Everything's good.
So the other thing, Doug, I really loved about your book, not to fanboy all over you, but I love the connections you made with happiness and success. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit as well, because as a person who, how do I want to say it? I've sort of been trained to look for the negative things because most of my career was in manufacturing. So I was a manufacturing engineer, plant manager, ME manager. So it was basically sort of my job to go look for place, and to some extent that's still true today. When I go out on a shop floor or in a hospital or a medical office or wherever, I'm looking for the problems so we can see them and bring them to light, talk about them, do something about them, fix them, get rid of them. And after a while, I can feel it that it does take its toll. So it's hard for me psychologically to switch between looking for problems and, looking for the good things. So can you talk about that a little bit and how you've, kind of managed
Sure.
that? And yeah.
So let's frame it a little differently. Your sole role is to find the problem in order to find the solution. So if you, instead of immersing your head in the I'm only looking for problems because that's where that's where I can service them best. If I can find a problem, I can find an engineering solution that will solve the problem, and thereby we'll be able to be in a good spot. Oh, and that makes me happy.
Hmm.
So it's like your happiness is delivered after you've solved the problem for a client, and the solution is laid out and everything is great. I get, and again, I think it's just a mindset thing. For me, I would look at it and think my sole role, because they're hiring me, fortunately, I'm hired to find a problem. So I tend to look at things very solution based. If I'm looking for a different marketing plan for my company, I'm not going to look at all of the negative stuff and say, geez, this is hopeless. I'm going to look at the negative stuff and say, man, look at all the opportunity I have for improvement within this space. There's a direct connection between, happiness and success. The happier you are, the more successful you're going to be, because the more positivity that you're going to bring to the responsibilities that you're delivering, to whatever deliverable that you're offering. So I look at everything that I do from a positive perspective. Even screwing up on, mundane things that happen. Again, I look at things as, what is this scenario teaching me? What valuable lessons am I pulling from this? What can I learn from this, from losing this client because we screwed up on this particular thing? So we've made a system improvement. And so we won't make that same mistake again with another client. And if we do, there'll be another solution that's involved. So every we're looking at the opportunity in every problem.
Mhm.
And so I always think that if you can look at the opportunity in every problem that's created, how can you approach anything other than, with positivity? And thoughts are things. I'm reading a book by Byron Katie right now, and I'm blanking on the name of the book, but it's all about not the problem, but how we perceive the problem. That is really the answer to whether we can be happy or not happy. And so thoughts, the stuff that's going on in your head, you're creating those. Nobody is throwing in negativity at you. You're looking at a problem and you are getting pulled down in the net, not you particularly, but you universally. When somebody sees a problem, you can look at it through whatever filter that you want to. You could look at it, if you're the problem solver, you can look at it with, hey, here's a great solution that I have for this. Or you could look at it and say, man, there is a problem. And look, when you see a problem, that actually is job security for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I encourage everybody that is in your listening audience that if you look at your job and you look at the things that are going on around you and you see negative, you're only going to attract more negative, because the law of attraction is going to bring all of that directly to your doorstep. If you look at the solution in every problem, the world is going to provide you with solutions. And so for me, there's a direct connection between happiness and success. There's a direct connection between problems and negativity. And negativity is just going to unfortunately, it's going to bring you a lot of failed attempts at success.
And we see, I'll be honest, I mean, we do see that sometimes. The road of continuous improvement is potholed with failures. And anybody who's listened to this podcast knows I hate the F word, but to your point, it's to me, it's only a failure if you allow it to stop you from you learn, all right, something bad happened. We didn't get the result that we were expecting. There's something in our industry, we use PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. So if you allow whatever that, so you do that cycle. And when you check it, you didn't get the result that you were hoping for. Well, if you allow that to stop you from continuously to improve, then yeah, I guess I would call that a failure. But to your point too, it's like when, if you look around and look at problems as opportunities, well, now it's a choice, to your point, right? How we view them, how we filter them through our brains is how we want to perceive them. Right?
And let me add this, because I think that if your audience is in an organization of any size, and think about the people within your organization for a moment. So now we're talking about people, not about just job roles. We're talking, instead of about mid-level manager, you have this guy John or Fred or Alice in your brain. Think about the people that are the stinking thinkers in your organization, the negative Nancy's in your organizations, the ones that nobody wants to be around because they're just a world of discontent. And in many organizations that I've had a chance to consult with, there's usually a handful of those people. And in the smaller organizations, there's always one person that's that guy. I'm like, why is that person still here? Well, they do their job really well, and but they're killing your culture. They kill the environment. If you don't know, or if you don't see that person in that organization, there's a chance that you are that person.
Right.
Because there's always one. Always one. So just think about it, and just think about whether you'd want to be around you if there was a tendency for you to be negative. Like, who wants to be around that environment? Yeah. So I always encourage the organizations, in order to build a positive culture, everybody's got to be on the same positive culture page. You can't be in that negative environment. That negative environment will be an anchor in your organization. Even one bad seed will could potentially create a negative culture for your entire environment.
Right. And I always call it like the death spiral, because they can pull people into their gravitational orbit, right? Yep. And it just, and it gains momentum, and it's hard to overcome.
Yep.
So Doug, I do always like to take a little bit of a break, or nowish, and play something I like to call the wicked fun part. If you are up for it, I have a few kind of rapid fire questions for you.
Hmm.
All right. Uh, Seeing as how history taken into account, what's your favorite song and why?
Wow. There is a bunch of songs that I really like by James Taylor, and I know that it probably ages me, but I'm just a folk rock kind of guy. So I'm going to go back to the 70s and probably say, something like Sweet Baby James or Steamroller Blues by you can really feel the vibe of the music. So I'm going to go
All right.
back. No significance in my life to it other than it just makes me smile hearing songs by James Taylor.
Nice. And see, I thought you were going to say Sweet Caroline because we're New England and we sing it seventh inning at Fenway. It's Doug, you would have had the whole region right behind you right there.
Played at every wedding that I have done between 1990 91 and of recent. So yeah, Sweet Caroline, great song. Love it.
What's the funniest thing that's happened to you recently?
Oh, geez. Funniest thing that has happened to me recently. Let me just think about stuff like that. I don't know how funny it is, but I have a 1965 Ford Mustang, and I've had it for a couple of years now. And it's always amazing to me that people put so much merit in this automobile. I was driving at a local shopping center, just driving through the shopping center, and a woman was in the shopping center. She basically stood in front of my car as I was driving through the parking lot, and she's like, "You're driving my dream car." And so I opened the door, and this is not too recently, it's before COVID, opened the door and I said, "Hey, just, take a seat in it." And she got in the car, she sat in it. She was like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever." And it's not really a funny story, but it is a story that, your dreams are completely attainable. The car was not very expensive. It is a car that literally sits in my garage. So I always tell everybody, hey, reach for your dreams. They're a lot closer than you actually think they are.
Nice. What light blue convertible?
Yeah, it's this one right behind me right
Yeah,
here.
that's why I was testing you there. But yeah, it's a great car. Would you say it was a 65?
65, yep.
Nice. 289 V8?
289, exactly. V8.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's a
My
great one.
my age, my age. The car was born in I think July of 65. I was born in December of 64. So for
Oh,
6 months of the year, we're the same age.
nice. That's awesome. I was born in 75, which was not a great era for vehicles.
Yeah, the 70s were a tough era for cars. Muscle cars, they were pretty good, but
Well, yeah, but right. So someday I hope to have a 70 Chevelle. So it won't be on my right. It won't be at the same age as me.
that's all right. Those mid 70s Camaros and the
Yeah.
Firebirds, they were great. I had a 76 Trans Am for several years, and those mid 70 muscle cars were good. Gas burners, but great cars.
Who cares, right? What inspires you?
I think watching people support other people really does inspire me. I love when we have a couple of people that are on our team that are in the sales training, relationship building side, and I just love to see the stuff that they can bring out. We have a pretty active Facebook group for our community of launching podcasters and those that have recently launched, and I love watching the people that I have trained to learn about how to launch podcasts and how to support somebody that's in the environment. I love to watch them respond to questions with the same answers that I would give. They're just using their words, but it's like, yeah, what inspires me is when I'm actually able to inspire somebody else to take action and they just do a great job with it. They kill it. And I love that.
Yeah, that's for me that same thing. When I've working with a client and I see the light bulb go off and somebody gets that look on their face like, wow, I can decide this and I made that decision and it worked and my boss is proud of me and it's like that's why I do what I do. Absolutely.
It's interesting when we're taught lessons from our parents, and our parents, told us all of these things as we were growing up, and then there are certain lessons that our parents trying to teach us that we just don't grasp, and then somebody that's a complete stranger tells us the same thing, and we get it.
Mm.
So that's another avenue. It's like it's amazing when I'm able to, I'll tell my customers 1,000 times, here's the action steps that you do in order to do this successfully. and they won't hear it. And I don't want to get frustrated, but it's like, hey, I've said the same thing so many times to so many people. And then somebody on my team will say it, but they'll say it through a slightly different filter. It's like, maybe it's just the words that I'm using, but I love when somebody is able to say the same exact thing that I'm saying, but saying it in their words, and it'll get through to a customer. That totally inspires me. I'm like, geez, I thought I knew it all. I really don't know it all. I really don't.
Right, right. What are you working towards in your free time?
More free time. I think for me, I worked very hard to try to maintain a schedule that's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are my work days, and Monday and Friday are the days that if overflow stuff comes into play, then I will take care of it. Like, I think we had bounced back and forth a couple of times with schedule to try to schedule this interview. And so giving me the ability to actually have some time that's flex time for me, that, hey, if I want to go out and take a ride on my motorcycle, or I want to go out in the car, or if I want to go for a walk for an hour and a half in the morning, I can do that. So I'm really working harder on creating more of that free time in my free time schedule.
Nice. And that's important too. I mean, a big thing that we talk about is work. I use the term work-life balance only because it's universally recognized, although I wholeheartedly reject it because there's really no work-life balance. It's just life,
Right.
and work's a part of it.
Right.
Um, and I strongly encourage, when we're talking about lean with clients, a lot of times, especially with frontline folks, I'll say, because sometimes people hear that term lean and they think trim the fat, less employees are needed. They automatically start thinking, I'm going to lose my job, or somebody around here is going to lose their job. So the way I combat that is, well, no, first of all, no, that's not anywhere close to what this is all about. And oh, by the way, once we do all these things, your life is actually going to get a whole heck of a lot easier. You're not going to leave at 4, 5, 6 o'clock at night feeling
Yeah.
drained
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
and you're actually going to get more product, more patient out, more patients through, and and there's been numerous times where we've gone through those steps, and those things have happened, and people will come back up to me and they're like, last week we shipped 500 units, and before you guys showed up 6 months ago we were doing like 200. Now we're killing ourselves. I don't know how you did it, and they'll just look around, and it's like, well, we move this, we move that, we stop doing this, and it's just a lot of little things. And so that's, same thing. It's like, now you've got that time back. You've got, you know all this stuff. You're not going home and you're just laying on the couch and having a couple beers and watching TV and trying to decompress. Now you can
Right.
go home and play with the kids or do something, and this life gets better.
Yep, yep. I agree. I had a few bouts in the mid 2015 timeframe with anxiety, and my daughter, she was wise. She was a 20-year-old at the time, or 21-year-old maybe at the time, and she said, "Hey, I want to look at your schedule." And we looked at my schedule, and literally Monday through Friday, from 8 o'clock in the morning till probably 7 o'clock at night, was booked solid with like appointments. And she goes, "You don't even have time in here on your schedule. You don't have any you time." I'm like, well, didn't even understand the term you time. She said, literally, you're going to put a block of time on your schedule that is just Doug time. And so I started doing that a handful of years ago. And then other things happened. Then things like meditation came into my life, and relationships changed in my life. And all of a sudden, Mondays and Fridays are those days where I have a whole bunch of me time, and I still have that on the Tuesdays and Thursdays and Mondays and Wednesdays as well. So it's like, wow, the you time factor is huge. You don't have to work harder to be more successful. You just have to work smarter. And so part of being working smarter is adding that you time and that free time in your schedule.
Nice. I love it. Towards that end, final wicked fun part question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Hey, I could see you were kicking some butt down there. You did it your way, man. You did it differently than most people did it. You did it your way. You were you spent time doing what you want with whom you want whenever you wanted to, and that's great. I mean, the key to that is, again, I'll go by James Taylor. I'm sure this is somebody else's quote. I think it's an Einstein quote. The secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. And so why don't we all try to figure out how we can enjoy the passage of time? This is not a let's see how we can work our tails off to maximize the amount of revenue that we get in so that we can take the 2 weeks that the man gives us and go on vacation. You can have a full-time job working in corporate America and still enjoy the passage of time. Life is too short to be miserable. So why not spend time really enjoying what you do, even if that means leaving the environment that you're in to find an environment that you enjoy.
Nice. Sound advice, Doug.
Thanks.
Hey, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can do that? And then I will link those out in the show notes.
Nice. Yeah, the best way to do it is just go to our website, which is turnkeypodcast.com, and I'll give you a forward slash toolkit. They can actually get a downloadable document, 5 ways to make money podcasting. They'll have access to a little workshop that we do and a free consult if they want to, talk about it. So it's turnkeypodcast.com/toolkit.
Nice. Thank you. And I will plug your book because I have read it and I really liked it. Nice Guys Finish First. So
thanks.
I know it's been out, a few years now, maybe?
Yeah, 2015 it came out.
All
and
right.
my publisher called me recently and said they were asking me questions about doing a reprint of it. I don't know that there's any copies available on Amazon. You can certainly plug it. If they can't get it, just reach out to me through that same link and I'll figure out how to get them a copy of the book electronically then.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Doug, thank you so much for, spending the time with us. I know everybody listening certainly got something from it. And I know I did too. I was really looking forward to chatting with you today because I knew I'd feel better after we did, right? It's like working out.
My pleasure, Paul. Thank you. And congratulations on the success of your show. You're how many episodes in now?
Oh gosh. I think we had 14 in season 1. And by the time this airs, you'll probably be 3 or 4 for season 2.
That's great. So you're 17 episodes in, which means that you are 5 episodes past the pod fade mark. So you're past where 70% of other podcasters have failed to go, which is really good. And I'm sure the metrics are on the rise. So you're doing great. Just keep knocking episodes out. Keep having on guests and keep doing your thing, sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with your community. I know that it will come to benefit you.
Cool. Thank you, Doug. Thank you. I appreciated that. All right. I will let you go so you can get some, actually, I was going to say get some work done, but as we're recording this, it's Friday. So what are you going to do the rest of the day?
I am done.
Take the Mustang out.
Yeah, maybe it's right now it's about it just turned sunny. It was a little overcast this morning here in LA. I'll go back outside at some point, take another walk. I've been enjoying the day, but I got a good fun weekend coming up.
Good. All right, Doug, I'll say thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Paul. Thank you.
All right, sir. Hey, everybody, it's Paul. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thanks again for listening. You've really made doing this podcast a very rewarding experience for me. I get a lot of messages from listeners, and everyone has something nice to say, which I very much appreciate. Of course, I'm always open to feedback on ways we can make it better. I mean, that's Kaizen after all. And by no stretch do I claim to have got this all figured out. So if there's things that I could do better, please, by all means, feel free to reach out and let me know. And likewise, if there's somebody that you think would be a great guest, also let me know. There's a chance I don't know who those folks are. So somebody that you can help put us in touch with, somebody you want to learn more about, certainly let me know and I'll reach out to those folks. But I hope you find the podcast fun and entertaining, educational, and maybe even a little inspirational, I hope. That's really what I'm going after with this whole thing. So thanks again. And one small ask, if you don't mind, if you listen, whatever your preferred platform is, if you could just, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple or whatever, again, whatever platform you listen to, it helps. The algorithms like it. So if you could do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, everybody.